I would recommend trying to focus on getting your protein in your meals, but I know some people just really enjoy snacking, or that's just a part of your routine. Like you always have a snack in the afternoon. So I'll give a couple of my suggestions for snacks. Maybe, I know you're not a big snacker, are you?
So I'll ask you, why do you suggest getting protein in meals versus snacks? I have a reason, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, because snacks tend to be, you want something crunchy, and it tends to be high carb, high fat, high caloric density type of foods, and it tends to be mindless eating too. So you tend to overeat snacks, like a bag of chips, and you just keep going, or pretzels or nuts, things like that. That, you know, a handful of mixed nuts is actually a pretty high caloric count because they're high in fat. They have oils in them usually. And I'm trying to think of a number off the top of my head, what a handful of nuts might be calorically.
400 calories?
Yeah.
Easily.
Which is a lot. That's a lot. Think about that. So just things, that's why I say be careful with snacking. And I'll give you some tips in a second for how to be more intentional about what you snack on and kind of how to control some of that. But what would you say?
Yeah, I would add, for me, snacking is going to curb my appetite until the next meal, and sometimes too much. So with a focus on inclusive eating, I got to get my water, I got to get adequate protein, I got to get adequate fruits and vegetables. By snacking, snacks usually come very processed, heavily processed, in a crinkly container, right? And they tend to have a lot of fat in them, even, and so they're gonna hold me over almost too well, and I'm not gonna be hungry for that 8-ounce meat serving and vegetables and carbohydrates and water. Historically, I've always been the smaller guy trying to put on muscle mass, so I don't need anything holding me back from eating as much as I need to eat. So for me, make the meal count. But if you need the snacks, I understand. Just make sure you're not eating anything that doesn't have protein in it.
That's the key. That's the key right there. That's my number one tip. If you're like, I have to have my afternoon snack, whatever. I have a rule for myself where, for the most part, unless it's like a conscious decision, I'm going to eat this because I want to, and which is okay too. I posted something about mindful eating in the group earlier today. But anyway, typically my rule for myself is I don't eat it unless it's centered around protein. So an example of that is I love salty pretzels, particularly this brand from Cincinnati called Grippo's. They're super salty and they're amazing.
Sounds gross.
Oh, they're so good. They're so good. By the way, and if you are gonna snack, you want something crunchy, I like pretzels because they're not fried. They're not typically as processed as like Doritos, things like that. This brand Grippo's is pretty simple ingredient list. There's another brand that I get at Kroger sometimes called Splits. That's like 3 ingredients, and those are pretty good too. They have them at Kroger. Grippo's you can't get down here, but CJ's mom brings them down for me. Anyway, so that's one of the reasons I like pretzels. But if I'm gonna have pretzels, I will dip them in Greek yogurt. Like,
it's smart.
Yeah, just so I'm getting some protein in. Like, I'm not just getting a carby snack, which that can fit into your plan.
Yeah,
but
you can fit it in.
There's a lot of reasons, like what we've said already, why it might not be the best thing for your goals. But if I'm gonna have salty pretzels, which is one of my favorites, I'll dip it in Greek yogurt. Sometimes like a strawberry, like a sweeter flavored Greek yogurt, or sometimes just plain Greek yogurt, almost like a dip, So that's just one of my strategies. Is if I'm gonna snack, it's gonna be something like that, or like biltong, which is like a South African beef jerky that's not as chewy and doesn't have the sugary finish to it. We could do a whole nother video about snacks. But anyway, that's just some tips about that. Always protein in everything. I call it the pie diet.
Yes.
Protein in everything. Protein in everything. Just eat pie.
If it doesn't have protein, choose something else.
Yep.